There are things that we're going to have to do to prepare for, the next 30 or 40 years in a large growing, fast growing urban center like Toronto. How do we incentivize at a political level some level of courage to say, I know you think it's a war on the car, but it's not. There's a whole, large, wide-ranging view of how we're going to not only get around in this city, how we're going to be productive in this city, how we're going to actually get from, deal with the growth, the innovation, all of the productivity issues that we need.
Yeah, it's a great question when it comes to transportation. I think in any good policy, when you're working with municipalities, by way of example, you need to have carrots, and then you need to have a stick if the carrots aren't taken up. Housing side, right? The carrots would be that you get to keep more of the land transfer tax revenue. Your project for that bridge, road, arena, water, sewer, what have you, goes to the top of an infrastructure funding list to reward getting more homes built. And if you don't, then I think the province does have to force zoning. So I think same here, John. I think what the province can do on the positive side is to use provincial funding to help improve transportation. We're seeing some of that on the rail side, roads, bike lanes in the right spot. But at the same time, ultimately, you do have to have that stick to utilize if they're not using the tools that they're afforded.
Dave, can I just say something on that? I agree with what Tim's saying, and I think that unless you're paying very close attention to city and provincial politics, you really don't have, I think, any idea what the overall plan is. And so I think one of the ways that there can be incentives in place for people to put up with challenges is in traffic or housing or whatever, is to understand where we're going, And it's interesting that the city brought out an economic plan just in the last couple of days. But again, that's got to permeate into people's day-to-day lives so they know what it is the vision is and where we're going. I had a staffer who always used to say, people need to be able to see the beach. They're not interested really in the flight to the beach, but they want to know what the beach looks like and that they're going to get there. I don't think we have a sense either provincially or municipally in some places, and Toronto being one of them, of exactly where it is we're going. And that is where I think the too much all at once feeling comes from, because it's like, well, why is all this happening and I don't know what the point is, so I do think we need a better sense of where we're going.
Well, John, let me just counter that and just suggest for a second that the bitch about the crosstown that you point out is we're not getting it done quickly enough. We could never get anything finished or completed in this city. So we're really in a conundrum here in terms of where the public sits in all of this.
Well, and Dave, look, I mean, you're talking to the person who was the Minister of Transportation when that project started. And don't doubt for a minute that I don't at 3 o'clock in the morning wake up and think, what the hell went wrong? So I totally get that. But one of my challenges with METROLINX when I was Minister of Transportation was getting information to people. So to my point about people knowing what's going on, I think the lack of transparency on why this is taking so long has just been outrageous. And it has created such anger and resentment in people because they don't understand. It just looks like incompetence, right? And so I just, to my point, people need to have information. They need to know what's going on, why it's happening, where we're going. And we've had none of that. I couldn't even get METROLINX to agree when I was first minister to put up signs on the scaffolding around projects to give people a sense of the timeline and what was going on and giving them some information. So we pushed through that and we actually got some signage, but that's a minor thing, but it's indicative of this reluctance to share information. And that's what creates resentment in communities. And I think we're at a very high level of that in terms of the lack of transparency in Toronto.
Let me jump in for a second and agree with what you've just said and also what Tim just said, because I think if you look overall from those of us who live in major urban centers, the LRT, let's call it that for a moment, is a disaster, not only in Toronto, but if you have to look to Ottawa and even Calgary, where it's even more of a disaster. It seems,
but not Waterloo, John. It's great in Waterloo. Beautiful.
Well, it may be in Great and Waterloo. I'm going to move there if they don't have too many bike lanes. But I think part of the issue then is when you when you take that issue of the crosstown and the bike lanes and the congestion downtown and the uncoordinated nature of the construction, the frustration is not just about the priority, but there's a sense that the city is broken. There's a sense that money is being spent on things that should be better prioritized for its citizens. And I think, again, there is no arbiter to this. I can accept the fact that the premier used to live here, so he understands it. I can accept the political fact that he wants to curry favor with more ridings in the next election campaign. But I can also accept the fact that there doesn't seem to be anybody who can coordinate, one of the largest cities in North America, and somebody's got to do something to help the residents and the city prioritize. So, we've got a lot on the go here, including the subway, that's just being built as well, but nothing seems to be working. And the priorities, even though we seem to have a deficit and we've got, other things we want to do, we don't know what the primary plan is going forward. Right. So I think he's on fertile ground for political support.